the strategic plan gives direction for the whole of geography as a discipline, but it also gives direction for the professional associations to try and progress understanding and acceptance of geography throughout the nation. One of the problems we have is with our identity. In Australia, sometimes we struggle to articulate what geography is and to help explain its importance to students, to career pathways, and to the public in general. And this is because there is a big gap between what geography looks like in schools and then what geography looks like in universities and then what geography can look like as a career pathway. So sometimes they're three very separate things, and it makes it difficult for everybody to try and understand what geography is all about. The other problem that we have in our teaching of geography in Australia is that we have a lot of out-of-field teachers. So we have a lot of teachers who teach geography that are not trained in it. And this just further emphasizes the problems of identity that we have. One of the good things though is that we have a national curriculum. So around Australia, we have a national set of content and skills that need to be taught. Each state and territory of Australia does it a little bit differently, but the guidelines are broadly the same. We are positioned within the humanities and social sciences, and sometimes this can be difficult because the science side of geography is lost. And when we have a lot of out-of-field teachers teaching geography only in a humanities context, sometimes they miss the, the science side of what's happening in geography. Also, another good thing that we have in geography are the GEOG standards. And so these are a set of standards that help us teach geography in the best possible way. And I'm going to talk about these in more detail in future slides. So as we look at our transition and our transformation of geography education in policy and in research and in practice, I'm going to start with our policy. Okay, which is our strategic plan on geography shaping Australia's future. So in chapter 13, there's about 15 chapters in this document, and we've got a whole chapter that's designated to geography in Australian schools. We have some recommendations that guide our future practice for the associations. The first thing is for geography to be core learning up to year 10. In New South Wales, we are very lucky. Where I am, we have geography as mandatory learning up to year 10. So as teachers and our students, we're very fortunate. But in other areas of Australia, it is only compulsory learning up to year 8, so about age 12 or 13. And we feel that this is a problem and something that we need to address so that all students have exposure to the same amount of geography. There's also a recommendation to try and increase the collaboration between the academic geographers and geography teachers in schools and geographers working in teacher education. There's a lot that we're trying to do to get geography recognised as a STEM subject. And another thing that we're working on is how to improve the quality of initial teacher education in geography. Of course, one of the big things that we're working on as well is trying to promote awareness and address the extent of the out-of-field teaching that's happening. So some of you may know the work of Professor Alaric Maud and Professor Ian Hay, and they have been very influential in the shaping of this whole policy document, and they've provided tremendous support in the way that the associations for geography education are trying to pursue these recommendations. We also have these 9 geography standards, the professional standards for the accomplished teaching of school geography. And these were produced from a research study by Gina Kriewalt and Nick Hutchinson. And they spent some time with expert geography teachers from around Australia. They went into their classrooms, they interviewed them, they filmed them teach, they interviewed their students, and eventually, after about 2 or 3 years, 9 standards were developed to show what good practice in geography teaching looks like. These standards are to be used by teachers and by professional associations to help us reflect on our practice and to help guide us in making decisions about what we can do to make our geography lessons more interesting. And I've provided a link here for them, but I'll talk about the 9 in a minute because they are also part of my research. The next part of what I'd like to talk about with the transition and transformation of geography education in Australia. So we've got that big policy document, we've got the geography standards, and now we have some new findings from the thesis that I have recently submitted, where I was looking at pre-service teachers and their journey into the profession as a fully accredited teacher of geography. And so with my participants over nearly 2 years, I was wanting to understand what their experience of moving from university into the teaching profession was like and how they transformed their pedagogical practice in geography using the GEOG standards. Because even though these standards here are 10 years old, there has been no research done on them further to see if they work or if they are suitable for good practice. We can only rely on what other people tell us from their experiences. So I was trying to include that in my research as well. So over the sort of 18 months to 2 years in 3 phases, I tracked them all through their time in their last year at university. And then as they started to get their first job as a teacher, and then also all throughout their first year in school. But their first year in school was last year. And we know that that was a very difficult time with the pandemic. And there was a lot of disruption to that. However, by constantly asking them the question, what makes your geography lesson geographical? And using the 9 GEOG standards for them to sort of think about in terms of what they were doing, we were able to they were able to make some really good decisions about how to teach geography in a distinctive and interesting way in very difficult circumstances, whether they were in a classroom or whether they were online. And so what we used was this theory, practice, reflection in response to this question overall. Every single time I met with them, every single time we had an interview, this was the question, this was what we reflected on. And we used the GEOG standards and reflexivity theory. So these are the 9 GEOG standards. And you can't do 9 all the time, but every now and then a combination of standards become really important for what you do. And my participants found that the first 5 were the most important for them. It was about being able to understand the geography curriculum and be firm in their content knowledge. It was about knowing how to do inquiry and fieldwork and when it was the right time to do these type of activities. It was about using the concepts and our geographical tools and our maps and photographs and geospatial technologies. But most importantly, it all came down to understanding their students and their school context and their surrounds geographically, so that they could help their students make connections to the real world and to their world, perhaps at home, sometimes at school when they were there, and to be able to draw on what the students already knew and to be able to extend it. So these 9 standards, whilst they came from the practice of very experienced geography teachers in the first place, what I wanted to know was, are these standards also relevant for those who are just entering their career, who are just starting? And we found out that they are relevant, and the first 5 in particular are the most relevant. The next thing we looked at was the reflexivity theory. And so what we did with this was we were thinking about our context. So sometimes, you know, they were teaching out of field. Sometimes they had very poorly behaved classes. Sometimes they had a lot of responsibility in their faculty. They were maybe helping some other teachers how to teach geography. And so we'd go through this process of, well, what's happening to you that is enabling you or helping you, and what is it that's a barrier or constraining you? And we worked out that sometimes it was their personal values and beliefs that enabled them. So their belief about what it means to be a teacher and what it means to be a geography teacher, that was a very strong enabling influence for them. But sometimes the structural influences, like the timetabling when they had to teach classes that were not geography, or if they were timetabled in a classroom that was at the opposite end of the school from where all their resources and their colleagues and their staff room were, or if they had a whole heap of responsibility that they weren't expecting and they were having to help other teachers, sometimes we discovered that these were a constraining influence on their practice. So whether things were good or bad, they had to go through the process of working out what it was, being able to think about what they were going to do, and then to take some action. And each time they took some action, they went back to the geography standards and they selected some geography standards that would help them best respond to the situation that they were facing. Okay, and so they were propelled forward by their beliefs about good geography teaching. Okay, and then sometimes when they found themselves in really difficult circumstances, they drew on these GEOG standards to help them get through and to cope. And in the end, the structure of the doctoral study group and almost the mentoring process that we went through became a structural enabler for them. So in my research findings, what we found was that there were good things and bad things as part of transitioning into the profession. Some of the bad things were that they taught out of field, they had a large workload, and there wasn't a lot of support for them in the schools. But what enabled them and what helped them was the GEOG standards and their personal values and beliefs about what it means to be a geography teacher. And then they beyond school support structures like the Professional Association for Geography Teachers or the doctoral study group. And what this meant was that their pedagogy in geography and the way that they taught it was able to change and be strengthened over time. So just going back to that question about what makes your geography lesson geographical, that really helped them. Even when I wasn't there, they were able to still work through their problems by thinking about the question that they knew I was always going to ask them. They knew that they had the GEOG standards and other theory to be able to guide them and support their decisions. So if their head teacher asked them about why they were doing things a certain way, they had some evidence to be able to show this is why. And along the way, it really helped develop them as very, strong and powerful teachers of geography. And their teacher subject identity really developed and blossomed over the 18 months to 2 years. What we found out about the GEOG standards was that the GEOG standards are an effective tool for reflection, that my participants could use them even when I wasn't there. They could still understand them and use them in their practice. And so therefore we discovered that the GEOG standards are suitable for use in a pre-service and early career context. So now the job with me in leading the association is to try and take some of these findings and combine it with the GEOG standards and combine it with the policy to help geography education in Australia move forward. And this is what our possible future might be. So I'm going to focus on 3 of these areas. The collaboration between the academic geographers and the geography teachers and the ones in teacher education, how we recognise geography as a STEM subject, and also how we can help to promote awareness and help teachers cope with the possibilities of teaching out of field. So we have been working very closely with the academic geographers through the Institute of Australian Geographers. And earlier this year...
Dear Susan, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Have I gone for too long? That's okay.
No, just a minute. Because your speech is translated in a real time to Turkish now. Just you can speak a little bit slow, just slow.
Sure.
We have time and don't worry, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Thank
Sorry
you.
to the translator, I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. So we will be working closely with the geography academics who are in the universities. And what we try to do is we try to attend each other's meetings so that we can share our knowledge about geography education and geography in the discipline. We can share our understanding together so that we can help together help build the identity of geography in a more holistic way and in an agreed way, and that this will also help our geography teachers as well. Earlier in the year, we had this conference, and this was the very first time that geography education had a presence in an academic geography conference. So we were very proud of that accomplishment. The university academics, they also host special study days for our students. And this will also help our students in schools to understand what geography looks like at university, and then how you can use your study at university to help you go on to a career in geography. And so this is one of the things that we are doing. The second thing that we are doing is to try and promote geography as a STEM subject. So we have been writing some journal articles to promote awareness about this. We have been participating in STEM specific events. Last year, we had a national symposium where we discussed with the academics and the teachers and those who are working in teacher education to explore the idea about what it will mean for geography to be a STEM subject, and how we might be able to promote that, and how we might be able to help teachers understand what they need to do to show geography as a STEM subject. We've started a series of workshops to be held at national conferences, and our curriculum recently has undergone some revision. So we give them the feedback that they need to make sure the geography connects with the science. So we keep that relationship there. And soon we will have a special issue journal about geography and STEM. So that's the second thing that we try to do for geography in Australia. And the third thing that we're going to do is to try and promote this awareness about how to cope with teaching out of field. And what we mean by teaching out of field is that you are teaching either a subject that you are not trained to teach, or you are teaching in the years of schooling that you are not trained to teach. So for example, a secondary teacher might be teaching in the primary school, something like that. It is also about the teacher saying that they feel not confident and they feel that they are teaching out of field. And in Australia, we have a very large percentage of teachers who teach geography who are not trained, and this is a big problem for us. So we have been trying to promote awareness again through the association, through writing some journal articles about it. And we found out in my research that every participant had a large out-of-field teaching experience. So we know that it's part of the transition into the profession. We've got a presence now within the Teaching Across Subjects collective, where this is the first time geography has been represented for teaching out of field. So we're very happy about that. And now that we have an Australian example from the research that I've done, we can start to use some of those findings to, together with the JOG standards, to work out how we can help and support teachers. So I think this is my final slide now. The key things I mentioned, we have some challenges that maybe you are familiar with also in Turkey, about the identity of the subject, about the gap that exists between geography in schools and geography at university, and what the public think about geography. I talked about how we want to help geography transition for a better future through the JOG standards and through the policy, Geography Shaping Australia's Future. And some of the things we want to do to help this transition is to keep the relationship very strong with the academics, to keep promoting geography as a STEM subject, and to help those who are teaching out of field. I'm sorry I spoke too quickly, and I hope this is okay. So thank you. That is the end of my speech. Thank you.